Thank you, Marty. Can everyone hear me okay? It's wonderful to be back joining all of you in this around the world virtual retreat. This is an online retreat, not on site, not a physical retreat. And yet, I trust you can feel a sense of a sangha, community, even though it is virtual. There is a value of a retreat like this online. We have well proved that in the last year or so. And yet, an on-site physical retreat, it's irreplaceable. It cannot be replaced. There's nothing like it. But this is the situation we now have. I trust it will be changing soon enough. I hope next month to be able to visit Europe, and in January to be back in the States for a retreat and so on. But online or on site, nobody can do the essential practice for you. And yet the Sangha, this community of like-minded practitioners, the Sangha is precious, even if it is virtual now. Please treasure it. As mentioned the other day, very simply, the practice begins with the body. Finding the proper best posture, physical posture for your body, and then settling into it. The breath is a very good way to unify, to fuse, to bring all together through the breath. Breathing properly in Zazen, you can see it quite quickly alters your state of mind. No, this is not the goal of Zen practice, but it's a very helpful way of using this body, breath, and mind to unify, to fuse all of our energy into one. This is really an essential entrance into the practice. Otherwise, as you well know, the mind just goes off in various directions, what is called mental proliferation. In other words, instead of unifying, it goes out into thoughts, questions, possibilities, desires, and so on. It can go on and on and on. So the basic practice of getting the body settled, and then through the breath, allowing the mind, this is the more difficult part, the mind to also settle. This is the entrance of Zazen practice. If it is not done properly, I trust you already see, the questions that are raised with the seeking mind are really just bringing the self's standard, the self's yardstick, measuring stick, the self's benchmark to the practice. It doesn't work. Self-manipulating, devising techniques as a means to get to some imagined end. This is not practice at all. Drop it. The sooner the better. And simply return to this, the body, the breath, and the mind. Not thinking about the breath, but the breath itself, being one with it. Then the sitting itself, the zazen itself, shows you the way you must go. If you have a genuine koan, you are able to lock on to the koan. The koan locks on to you in a very good way. This is completely different than the seeking, discursive mind going out and considering possibilities, thinking about such and such. We are not seeking techniques, physical or mental, as means to an end. But it is very important to learn how to settle with the body, how to settle with the breath, and how to really settle the mind. But it's important not to turn these into techniques as a means to an end. That is what Baso, the early Chinese Zen master, meant when he spoke of defiling. Again, to give you that quote in context, the early Chinese Zen master Baso, to quote, "The way needs no cultivation, just don't defile." That means to make dirty or stain. What now Baso himself asks the question, and then he himself answers. Again, Baso continuing. What is defilement? When, with a mind of birth and death, you calculate and manipulate, all is defilement. If you want to know the way directly, ordinary mind is the way. What is ordinary mind? It means no calculated manipulation, no right or wrong, no grasping or rejecting, no temporary or permanent, no secular or sacred. End quote from Baso. What are you going to do with that, Are you going to try and manipulate that, turn that into something? Endlessly rearranging, manipulating the content of your seeking mind. This is the split, the discursive, diluted, for Baso, defiled mind. That is what must end, period. In a sense, that's the first point of genuine practice, for that mind to come to its own end. To paraphrase a very famous statement from Rinchi or Rinzai, the father of Rinzai Zen. Quote, once the ceaselessly seeking mind comes to its own end, you are Buddha. You want to know the real Buddha? none other than you right now listening. End quote. Period. What you gonna do with that, huh? Lin-Chi Rinzai is pointing to the stark, naked, bare fact. Without a thing, everything is born anew. Practice here. That is to practice without defiling. Practice here. Create here. Live and love here. Freely laugh and dance here. And freely cry here. The world is at your feet. You see how different this is from endlessly rearranging the content of your discursive mind. This is the dead end of self-delusion, of self-defilement, as Baso would speak of it. Seeking to do something, to be something, seeking for some excitement, some diversion, some pleasure. But after a while, you start to feel overwhelmed, maybe too much. Have to slow down, do less, maybe meditate. How long before the too much is not enough? You get bored and you start seeking again. Round and around we go. This is the dead end of self-delusion, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. You must see what your mind is doing, and then refuse to continue that delusive charade. It's pointless. It leads nowhere fast. That is true practice. To go round and around and around with our discursive mind, that's just a symptom of the self's dis-ease. It's clear, isn't it? Since we're hosting this from New York City, and there's also some people from London, I want to mention a famous 1960s musical. It was in the West End and also on Broadway. The title was Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. Stop the world, I want to get off. It's not the world that needs to stop, is it? That same early Chinese Zen master, Baso, one of his great disciples, came to him. And this is the story of that disciple's awakening. This disciple came and he said, I am here seeking the Buddha Dharma. Baso says, ignoring your own treasure, why do you abandon your home and wander about? Here, I don't have a single thing. What kind of Buddha Dharma are you looking for? The monk bowed respectfully and asked, what is my own treasure? Baso replied, that which is asking right now is your treasure. Perfectly complete, it lacks nothing. Use it freely. Why seek elsewhere? with that, the monk, his name was Hui Hai, realized his original mind beyond knowing and feeling, as it said. End quote. What you going to do with that? What are you going to turn your own treasure into? Huh? Where are you going to look for it? Where are you going to find it? Who is the one that is looking? See that, and your journey is done. Then it's best not to even leave a trace. Let us return together to the real work of practice, this almost week-long retreat. It's a precious opportunity. If something comes up after the retreat and you feel the need to be in touch, we can always be in touch again, for now online, but I'm here for you. We are all here for each other. Let us continue on to the very end. I don't mean just the end of the retreat. Certainly do, please, to the end of the retreat. Make best use of this precious opportunity to confirm it in your own bones. But even more important, to continue on to the very end, I mean to the very end of yourself. I want to leave plenty of time for real questions from out of the practice. This can be of benefit for all. So please feel free to take a moment to stand up and stretch, and then let us continue together with questions, comments, concerns. Thank you all for listening so intently. Many of you are not native English speakers. If there's something said that you didn't understand or would like to get clear about, please feel free to ask as well. There may be others with the same question. Marty, I hand it over to you.
Please, if there are any questions or responses to what Jeff said, this is your time. You can just unmute yourself and speak, or raise a hand, or use the chat box to let me know. I'll start off. Just a question: is it this getting to the bottom of oneself? Is it an act of will? Is it a grr push kind of thing, or is it something else? How is it undertaken?
Mm-hmm. In the beginning, we do need to apply ourselves. We won't be able to begin if we just let our mind wander. So, yes, in the beginning, we need to consciously, willfully bring ourselves back when our mind wanders. This is maybe what we call grunt work. It may not be very interesting or exciting, but to bring the mind here, back here, that's all. And it can seem frustrating and difficult, maybe even impossible. But once you do it, you realize that the difficulty is actually your wandering mind. It's not, what is difficult about this? It's not even one. So finally, it's the simplest thing in the world. It's not even one. It's what is always already here. But to fully realize that, you see, that's where, without intent, without bringing the mind back, focusing it and settling it, you have a sense, you maybe get a sense of feeling, maybe it lasts for a little while, but it doesn't really help. It maybe even becomes something that you then chase after. So the initial determination is necessary. Without that, you won't be able to begin. But what I want to stress, Marty, and you know this well, is that the difficulty is not the practice. The difficulty is what the mind is doing. In a sense, it's not practicing. It's wandering off, it's escaping. And that's the frustration, the difficulty. That's why the value of your question, Maria. It is necessary in the beginning. It's not just going to happen. No, even if it does, you won't be able to do anything with it. You must willfully bring the mind back patiently, humbly, sincerely, again and again, until you realize it's always already been here. But to really realize that, yeah, it takes some more. Would you like to say anything else, Marty? I appreciate your question.
Thank you. Anyone else? Feel free.
I have a question. So, okay.
Go ahead.
You said that we're also going beyond thought and then also feeling. And so once one is concentrated and thoughts subside, how do you go past sensing, feeling? I'm not sure I understood what you said by that.
Yeah, you can't really get past the sensations because that itself is
Right.
the body and the mind producing something. So you can't will to get rid of your will. You can't do that. That's the greatness of Zazen, you see? The way that we hold our body, the way that we hold our breath, and the way that we hold our mind all supports this, allows the senses, all five senses, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and the mental sense. Mind is just a sense organ in Buddhism, okay? So actually we speak of six senses. The five senses we're all familiar with, and mind, it's just another sense. When through sustained practice, the sense experience becomes settled, calm. Remember the other day in the Dharma talk about the calming the waves of the mind so that you can clearly see, it is clearly revealed, the mind pearl. So again, as a process, this is very much connected with Marty's question as well. As a process, you still the mental waves, not just mental, but all the senses. But we're not cutting off the senses. Do you follow? For example,
Yes.
when we sit, we don't close our eyes. We actually leave them half open, looking down, because the eyes can function. That's not the problem. The problem is what the mind does with what it sees. We don't put cotton in our ears. If the fire alarm goes off, we can hear it because it's not a problem. The sounds are not the problem. All of sense experience, including the mind, purely experienced, is not a problem. You see, it's what the discursive mind does with it. So to really calm the waves of the mind, all of the sense experience, when you actually do that, you see, far from closing down, becoming blind and deaf and dumb, actually on the way, there is a time when that kind of happens in very deep jhana meditation. But the point is, when you wake up from that, the senses, how to say it, they now flow back from the source itself in seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and the mind itself now comes to life, not through the lens of the self. Follow? Not through the lens of the self-centered self. Now it comes, how to say, directly from the source itself to the source itself. And that's why there are all these Zen expressions. You see with the ears, you hear with the eyes. They're just trying to point to this kind of thing. So we don't need to blind ourselves or destroy all of our sense experience. We just need to let it be what it truly is, in a sense, without manipulating it. So maybe the real nub of your question, Zen practice is not about having no feelings or having no thoughts. This is nonsense. We're human beings. I would say it's about purely feeling. You follow?
Yes.
to feel purely.
That
That's why
makes
I mentioned to cry freely, not just to laugh freely, but to cry. If a loved one passes away, cry your eyes out. Cry your eyes out. They deserve that. It's not about holding back or suppressing or becoming cold and unfeeling. On the contrary, the feeling is completely liberated.
Right.
And that's true of all the senses, including the mind. You don't become a zombie. Does that help, or do you want to say something else?
No, that helps a lot. I understand now. That makes it clear. Thank you.
So we have about 4 other people right now that have questions. Agnes, if I may ask you to mute yourself, that'll help keep the noise level down. Thanks. Forgive me if I pronounce the names wrong. These are new folks to me. T. Kuhlman has a question.
Hi, yes, that's us, the Hungarian bunch. Hello, everybody. Given that there's many people waiting, I'm passing on my question because Jeff, you kind of answered it in your previous answer to Agnes. So thank you very much. It was going to refer to the original mind. How does the original mind work in practice? So I think you answered that. So thank you. I pass it on to the others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Delia.
So next we have Dennis.
Yeah. Hello. My question is, Jeff.
Can you speak a little louder, Dennis?
Yes, I'll try. Okay, my question is, how do I even begin to ask this most important question of all, when in that asking itself, I've already missed the point?
It's a good question, actually, in the record of Linchi or Rinzai, huh? There's a point where he says, if anyone has a question, speak up, but as soon as you open your mouth, you're already far away. He doesn't even give them a room, but there is a place to ask a genuine question, as you are doing now. Huh? How can I even ask that question? Dennis, pull it out of yourself. You don't have to put something in there. What's in the depths of your heart, Dennis? What is it that needs to be resolved, answered in this life? Is that mysterious or strange or hard? Huh? Is that in somebody else's book? What is the longing in the depth of your own heart, Dennis? Don't make it more complicated than it is. What must be done, Dennis? Is it clear?
I trust it will be.
You take your time, but you don't need to put anything else in there. Just open up to what's there, Dennis. You're carrying that gem around in your hand the whole time.
Thank you so much.
Gerald, please go ahead.
You already asked my question. Thank you.
My apologies.
Leon?
Not really a question, a comment on, which may be a question, but yesterday as I was sitting my side to the computer camera, looking out doors with a glass door half open. A large insect, I think a large fly, got caught in the little window above the door. And obviously was trying to get out. It kept looking for the light, going banging, banging, banging against the glass, making quite a lot of noise. And I thought, oh. And I just silently found myself saying to myself, with very much your talks in mind and practice, the way out is through the door. And at that point, the insect backtracked and went out through the door. And I thought, maybe a good metaphor for practicing the wrong way and getting more into good practice.
We can learn a lot from those flies, can't we?
Mm.
David?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My question is about when does...
David, one sentence. If it's not clear, don't ask it.
Sure, no problem. My question is about when does a method that you use to transition from Dharma to Dhyana, from where you have modifications of mind to where you're one-pointed, when does a method like inhaling while tightening your abdomen, exhaling downward, and using hu or mu become a technique rather than a method?
It obviously already used to you. Throw it all out. Throw it all out. Start over. Start with the breath. Start with the breath. You got all this stuff going on. You think you're working with a koan and you're talking about the breath and jhana and all that. Throw it out. Throw it out. It's meaningless. Start where you are with the breath, David. Got it?
But I have a koan.
You don't have a koan. You don't have a koan. Or at least what you're doing with it is not working with a koan. Drop it. Bring it all to the breath. It will show you the way you must go. If you go into all these ideas, what's the method? How is the method? Wouldn't the method? That's not the method. That's just.
No, I was following up. I'm sorry.
That's just.
I was following up on your earlier statement that Zen is not a technique, but we do use method to focus the mind, and it's hard to know where that dividing line is between a method and technique. Is my question.
Yeah, drop it. Drop it. Thinking about it is not going to help you in any way. The technique, the method is the breath. Put yourself there instead of thinking about it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I can't see everybody on one screen, so if you have a question, just unmute yourself and please ask it.
I have a question.
Please.
Okay. During this retreat, I have a lot of physical pain, which is not normal for me in this intensity. And it feels really difficult to let go the self with this pain, because this pain creates self-concern. So how can I deal with it?
Where's the real pain, Birgit? I don't think it's Michael sitting next to you, is it?
Yes. No, he's not the pain. He's not the pain.
Pain of the S.
What is the real source of your pain?
So maybe it's not in the body.
Well, it is in the body, but is that all?
No, it's not all. Okay, I go with that.
Once sit through. We're not trying to have pain. This isn't torture. But if you're sitting and pain arises, be there with it. Be there with it. Appreciate it. What is it saying? Savor it. Do you need to correct your posture? If so, correct your posture. Or sometimes you realize you need to just sit through it. And if you do, you will realize the source of pain, how it arises, stays for a while, and then it's gone. But to be there, you see, fully there with the breath, the body, the breath, and the mind, the pain arises. You don't react, but you don't deny it either. It's fully there. Maybe like a wave, huh? Experience it fully. Experience it fully. So fully that you can also experience it eventually washing away. Then you know. Going to the dentist isn't such a problem after that. But you are putting yourself up against the pain. You see that, don't you? Yeah.
Yes, if I start struggling, it's over.
I know. I spent years like that. But eventually, when you're settled enough in the sitting, whatever comes, it can come fully. And then it can go fully. And it doesn't hold on. It has no place to grab onto. Then you realize pain is a big problem, but it's not really the problem. It's not the problem. It's what the mind does with it.
Yes.
Okay. Confirm it for yourself. Marty, my apologies. We went 3 minutes over.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
I think it's quite worthwhile if there are other questions and you're willing to continue, please do so.
As you wish.
Are there any other questions?